in theory, it would be possible to map all of the old elements. So for example, we have chapter title is a H3 class chapter title or something like that. It would be possible to map that to a new element that was more correct semantically and up the buck file to point to whatever that new element was. In theory, it shouldn't change anything. The edge cases where we get into are things where people have set up custom styles that target the old markup with specificity that doesn't really work once the conversion process is done. Because if you can imagine someone has targeted a chapter title, which is an H3 class chapter title, and instead of targeting it by class name, you could keep the class name consistent, but if they've styled it based on it being an H3, then their styles break once you make it no longer an H3 and make it the appropriate element.
But that would only fail in custom styles instances, right? That's the concern where, yeah, the part that's so tricky for me as a product owner is I don't have any real usage data about any of our features. So like, for example, I don't even know that we have 21 premium themes, Ned. What's our most popular theme? Well, I assume it's McLuhan. What's our second most popular theme? Right? Like I'm trying to get more of that data and there's ways to get it. But right now, like, I don't even know who's using custom styles and there's no real good way to find out.
There is though.
But there is.
So
I could look to see whether certain CSS files are enqueued on every book or something, or what would I look for?
Yeah. No, so you don't need to do that. You actually need to, there's WP CLI commands for both of these things. I wrote a WP CLI script to get a list of which themes are being used on each network a while ago. Yeah, it's not actually, I can't even really take credit for writing it. I just looped through all of the things and
yeah, well,
anyway.
So I made a request of like Phil to do this like 3 months ago, and it was one of those things that just kept getting pushed and pushed and pushed. But so if there's an existing script somewhere,
I'll take a look. I'm pretty sure I have that somewhere. The other thing was for custom styles.
Yeah.
I believe, if I'm remembering how the feature works correctly, the custom CSS is stored in a single post. And so each book, I believe, if it has custom styles, you can check by like getting the contents of the post of that post type. And if it's empty, then it's not being used. And if it's got content in it, and you can check based on PDF, EPUB, or HTML. So there's a few tools that could be used to evaluate that kind of thing. And it's not super user-friendly, like you're not going to get a nice dashboard readout of which books are using which themes.
No, I don't need that. I mean, but the stuff you're describing, that is stuff I just don't know about the Pressbooks product. Yeah. I wish I did.
Well, it's not. The thing is, it's not Pressbooks product. It's just me running scripts on the server, which is often how I had to do things. So I can. But what I could do is I can take a little look around this evening and see if I can find any of those kicking around, because I still have a huge Pressbooks folder of random stuff. And
of course
if I find them, I will send them your way, and then you can get them to Homan and Carlos, and they can run them on each network.
And include some kind of invoice too as well, Ned, because this is uncompensated labor, of course.
Okay. Well, if I have it, it'll take me 5 minutes, and if it doesn't, then I will give you an estimate.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And then in terms of the custom styles thing, I mean, yeah, I don't think that would be too complicated to figure out either. I don't think I had a script for that, but I think in terms of evaluating where it's actually being used.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't realize it was all stored in a reliable custom post, or like a predictable custom post pattern. I should have looked at that. And then
there's also
read this.
Yeah, and there's also something that might be helpful, which I'll tell you about, and this might take a little bit more spelunking, but it's something that you can look into maybe with the dev team, and I'm happy to chat about it further if that's helpful. I built when I was working on Buckram, we were dealing with this situation where we would add new features to Buckram, and we would need to be able to detect feature support. And so there's actually some code that tells you what, like, if a book was locked,
yeah,
specific version of Buckram, it will kind of try to prevent you from unlocking it. It saves a copy of that version of Buckram so that if you unlock it, it won't break it by upgrading to a new one and losing some, moving some stuff around. The other thing that's related to this that's really important is there's actually, just give me a second, I'm going to find this, and I'm just going to search in the GitHub and try to find this to show you what I'm talking about, because this is really the thing you're looking for here. What would be critical to this overhaul of the CSS and sorry, not the CSS, of the markup, would be being able to use it to, like, if you add a new markup output in Pressbooks, you need to make sure that it's not going to use that new markup if the theme installed doesn't support it, right?
Yes.
So say, for example, you're running, someone has an old version, an old theme, and you've changed the markup. You don't want to be like using
you don't
the
want to
new
introduce
markup
breaking
with
change
doesn't
breaking
support
change
it.
it. Yeah, exactly. Oh shoot.
Right. So
we got to
this
support all of
function
our
here,
old themes, is what you're telling me, for forever.
No, you don't.
We
What
should
I'm
check
saying,
to see which ones we do need to support using this tool, or what are you saying?
okay, so here's what I'm saying. So you have this function, get Buckram version, right? And this is something that figures out what version of Buckram is available to the current theme. So if you're running a theme, say Malala, I don't know which version of Buckram Malala was probably, but okay, right now export routine that creates what is it called? It's called XHTML or something like that. It's the one that creates the HTML that is fed to prints, right?
Yeah, XHTML, yep.
Keep that one, deprecate it, create a new one that's called create HTML5 or something like that. That's the new semantic markup. And if you can keep a compatibility version of the Buckram styles that works with the old markup. And if a book is using the old theme, an old theme that was built to work with a particular version of Buckram, you just feed them that old, you see what I mean?
The markup produced by the XHTML routine.
Yeah.
So what you're proposing then would be, instead of improving the XHTML generation thing, just say, all right, leave frozen as is, and any themes that use it, that's fine. Instead, produce a new HTML5 output routine that produces better HTML markup.
Exactly, yeah.
And start using that with modern themes that we're still maintaining.
Exactly. And then you can do something like, you could, and probably what would make sense would be to do a breaking change version of Buckram, so increment from 1.x to 2, and any theme that you don't intend on maintaining, you lock it to Buckram 1.x. There's actually also, I really need to just write this all down somewhere coherent, because I feel like I'm jumping all over the place, but there's a filter that lets you point to your own version of Buckram instead of the one that's bundled in McLuhan. So what you could actually do is, for any themes that you want to maintain on the old 1.x version of Buckram and that you want to keep using the XHTML, you could add a filter to that theme's functions file that says, I've got my own version of Buckram in here. It's the old one, use it, which then in turn would mean that exporting to PDF would fall back to the old XHTML export.
Wow. Okay, so Ned, I don't really understand a theme declaring which version of Buckram it uses. I think my assumption was all the McLuhan child themes just automatically use the most recent version of Buckram.
Yeah, they do, but I built a method into it for them to be able to declare their own version.
Variation for this very kind of weird thing.
Well, because the thing we were starting to think about, like we had talked about this markup improvement thing for a really long time. And so when we were doing Buckram work and starting to integrate it into all the themes, I built a few helpers into it as a way of like long-term paving the way to a transition of this kind, because I knew that there would be a need to allow Buckram to fall back to an older version if there were themes that we weren't going to maintain, because Buckram is part of every theme now, or all of the new themes, all of the maintained themes. If there was ever a desire to deprecate a theme and we kept changing Buckram, there would be a certain point where that theme would break. And if we were still going to make it available to people, we needed to give them a way of locking it in at that old version of Buckram. So I built that filter in so that a theme could, if you said, okay, we're discontinuing Austin 2 or whatever, pick a random theme. We're going to discontinue this.
You know which one we're going to discontinue?
Which
Bukowski.
one?
Bukowski.
Okay. Yeah. So Bukowski.
Okay.
So we'll discontinue Bukowski. If you're going to discontinue Bukowski, the steps are make a copy of Buckram within Bukowski at whatever the current working version is, commit it to the source code, add that filter which says, this is the path to Buckram for Bukowski. It's in here. Don't go looking for it in McLuhan. Use this copy instead. And then release an update to Bukowski, that's the last update. And then it will always use that version of Buckram that it includes instead of using the latest and greatest one that's in McLuhan.
If we've frozen the XHTML export routine as well, we won't ever have structure problems because Buckram's or Bukowski is saying use XHTML when you generate PDFs rather than the new HTML5.
Yeah,
and that makes sense, Ned. You've pre-thought this out, and I didn't know any of that.
And there is something which I'm trying to find in Pressbooks. There are oh yeah, okay. So check this out. I'm going to share my screen. This is this is the Pressbooks XHTML export routine. There is a conditional check in here which looks for specific versions of Buckram and does different things to the markup depending on them. So that capability is already being used here. For a while, we didn't have the header elements, so chapter, title, author, and so forth. They didn't have a containing element. And then at a certain point, we added that, but we needed to add it only to themes that supported the new styling that was necessary for it. So with Buckram 0.3, we added this new check which says, if you're 0.3 or greater, then wrap the header elements. Then for Buckram 1.2, we got rid of the short title because we'd been outputting this hidden element to allow the short title to be extracted and used in running content when we actually were able to extract it from the meta info in the head of the XHTML document. So we did away with that, that unnecessary element after Buckram 1.2 came out. So these are the kind of things where you can kind of conditionally check for versions of Buckram and do specific things based on them. For something like switching to a whole different base HTML format for the PDF export, that would be something in a higher level in the export routine, where if someone clicked PDF, you would run this check and switch to XHTML to HTML5, depending on which version was there. Yeah. The other thing that complicates all of this is EPUB. Because right now, to my knowledge, what's still happening is an EPUB 2 is being generated, and then it's being converted to an EPUB 3.
Yeah.
And so logically, this would also be the right time to transition to generating native EPUB 3 with updated semantics and making those semantics work with the new Buckram styles that work with the HTML5 for PDF as well.
What was the blocker to doing that previously, Ned? Do you remember?
Resources, I think.
Time.
It was just like we had a working EPUB 3 export and it wasn't great, but it was better than not having one. And I think like weighing that against other features that were more priorities, it was like, well, we already have it. If we have a chance to do this later, we'll do it.
Why fix something that isn't broken or improved? Okay.
And also the idea too there, I think, was that if we were going to redo the EPUB 3 exporter from scratch, we would want to make these semantic changes as well, which would mean also doing a bunch of work to Buckram and also doing a bunch of work to the PDF export and all this stuff. And so it was kind of like, by that nature, it was a bigger project than just redoing the EPUB 3 exporter. So
yeah,
that's the context there as far as I remember.
Okay.
Yeah.
The connected thing is, this is something that I wasn't aware was an issue, but Taylor just filed it and I need to investigate it. It needs kind of to be scrubbed a little bit, but apparently we have an accessibility problem with the way that we're creating footnotes in our PDFs.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
And I'm not sure what the nature of the error is, but what is happening when we make a footnote? We're not in a PDF.
Yeah.
Is it a list or what is it?
So, Steele, this is one of the great regrets of my life, is the way that we do footnotes. No, that's an exaggeration.
Oh,
no,
hey, good.
No, so the way that footnotes work in Prince is sort of weird and hacky. And I remember having this conversation with some people at the Page Media conference that Hugh and I went to a couple of years ago about how unsatisfied everyone was with it. Basically, the way a footnote works in Prince is that you insert the content of the footnote in line, like in the paragraph. And then you use CSS to pull it out and move it down to the bottom of the page to a footnote area. The problem with that is that you get weird style issues because of it. Because, for example, if you put an H3 in a footnote, like you can't do certain things in footnotes because it breaks the semantics of the HTML to have, for example, a block quote within a span within a paragraph. Like you can't do that.
Correct.
It's not allowed. It will
You can't put block elements in inline elements or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. And so the footnotes are already limited by being span tags. And so there's a few issues I've seen floating around over the years about that, where people try to put an H3 in and it doesn't work. And then they're like, why is this not working or something?
They want to put a block quote in a footnote, for example.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. So that's one of the issues. In terms of the list failure, I have no idea, honestly, because I don't know what that validation is looking for. I'm confused about it simply because I don't think the footnotes are in a list element. I think they're just moved using CSS and put in some sort of sequence, but I could be misinterpreting that. And I don't know exactly what it means from looking at the screenshot. So
I think what happened was Aperva generated a PDF, ran it through the Adobe Acrobat Pro's accessibility checker, and then reported this to us. I don't have access to that Adobe Pro checker or the PDF itself, and so we'll need to get that so I can actually read the content of the error and what its substance was, and then from there extrapolate back to the HTML, and it's going to be fun, but we'll need to scrub that bug better. Okay.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm happy to chat more about this stuff, Steele. I think.
Well, I feel so. Here's the thing, Ned. You don't work for Pressbooks anymore, and I feel like I would love to have you as a consultant or to have you as a part-time helper, but I would like to also, if that's how it's going to work, to make that real and to pay you for it. Yeah.
Well, I have to think about it and figure out like what would make sense. Cause I think what I wouldn't want to overcommit time, you know? And I think it would be the kind of thing where if we were going to do something formally like that, maybe having like a couple hours a month to just join in a dev chat and people could like, you could pick my brain and I could like dig up old references to things and try to fill in some of that context. Like
that'd be amazing.
That might be workable. And I mean, even if that part of that were joining the open source call, also, and like, having some context there. So I'll think about it and let you know. In the meantime, I'm happy to try to dig up those links to the scripts that I was running to get theme usage, because I had to do that. Like, I actually had to do that in order to do the Buckram transition, because when we started deciding which themes we were going to convert to Buckram,
you needed to know which ones were in use.
I needed to run all of the stats on all of the networks and see, okay, are any of these networks using this theme? If not, I don't think we need to maintain it, so that we could make those cases and make them with data. So so I should have those, and I'll send them to you right away if I do.
Cool. And then just in terms of fun stuff rather than questions, you may be interested in. We're working on 2 like big long-term cool features that I think you'll be pretty excited about. One of them is we're finally building a Pressbooks meta directory.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So we're using the API, the V2, the API for books. We're going to grab a bunch of book information. We've got a free license to use this search tool called Algolia. I don't know if you've heard of it or seen it before.
I have heard of it. Yeah.
Okay. So we've got Algolia, an open source license for that. And so we'll be storing the JSON information from all the networks in Algolia, and then we'll build a front end that lets people search it. And it will have a bunch of searching, filtering stuff for essentially every known Pressbooks network. So we'll make a super Pressbooks. And then the plan after that would be for our EDU clients, they could create an account, they could save lists of books, and then we'd run a mega cloner. So we could, if they said, let's clone 25 books, we would just go and grab the books and move them to their network or something like that.
Super cool. No, those are great. That's awesome.
It's going to be a really fun project. And it's going to just, I think, surface the visibility of the books that are living right now in some individual school silo that no one else knows about, which is
yeah, totally.
Hopefully it'll also motivate people to improve the quality of their metadata when they realize, like, wait a minute, my book, this is imperfect metadata. Well, it's showing up in a public directory now. I better
get Hugh to look at book A Futurist Manifesto, because I think some of the author data got mucked up with that.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like I'm joking, but I'm actually serious.
No, I've seen it too. Yeah, he's got himself listed twice as the author.
It's like Hugh McGuire, Hugh and something, and yeah. Anyway,
that's Hugh's deal. Okay, yep. And then the second thing we're doing is we're upgrading the LTI plugin to 1.3.
Oh, nice.
And we're adding support for the grade cert outcome, the kind of stuff that was
yeah.
So Pressbooks as courseware kind of thing is happening, and that's
cool.
Dak before he left was worked with Homan and Carlos, and they built a prototype of like a H5P grade farrier that works in 1.1, and now we're like most of the way done with the 1.3 update.
Awesome.
I don't think you worked on LTI much. That was Dak's thing, or is it?
I really tried to avoid working on it as much.
So you probably don't care much about that one, but
well, I'm glad. I mean, I saw the new PHP library that LMS Global or IMS Global came out with. So that was exciting.
Maintaining,
Yeah. No, so it seemed like a good foundation for that.
And
awesome.
They've moved everything onto. They're using JOTS, and we had that talk with James Rissler, a year and a half ago before you left, all about that.
Yeah.
So that's been positive. And then the third thing is that we're supporting or about to support multilateral SSO, which was always the.
Oh yeah.
We bought it.
Is that the thing where you can pick from a list of institutions and
a wayfinder, basically? All we needed was a wayfinder, and what ends up is like there's this tool provider in England called Open Athens, and they have this Keystone tool where they do all the SAML and all the other stuff. They use they use OID Connect. So we built a version of our plugin that uses OpenID Connect so we could get the wayfinder. It was like way overkill, but like whatever. So
yeah, cool.
That's going to go live for a client at the end of the month. So finally, it's like a real education kind of thing, and it's been a long slog, but what I'd like to do after we turn our attention to that is we probably should update Aldine and the catalog feature if we're using the API to build a big catalog instead of just pulling it from. We have both a network meta table and we have an API, so we could rebuild how that catalog.
Yeah, totally. Well, that was always the dream, was once they got that network meta table, they were able to do something more dynamic with it.
Could you give me the 2-minute story for what Aldine, like Aldine was, what was Plank's role in all of that? And then what was your role? And I saw some spec docs
Oh,
and I was like, oh, I didn't realize Plank was even involved.
Planck did the designs for the front end for McLuhan and for Aldine. So basically, they were contracted to design the look and feel of the webbook theme that's part of McLuhan, and the landing page catalog theme that was Aldine.
Okay.
And I think what happened was we got Sonia to build. Sonia and her partner. Do you know them?
No, but
Sonia is a designer who's
I
worked
emailed
on
her because she had those little logos for a
Oh, yeah.
That was where you could put me in touch with Sonia.
Yeah. So she and her partner, I think we brought them in to help with that build just because we were really swamped, and so they did a bunch of the initial work on Aldine. And then, yeah, I mean, there's not much story to it. It was commissioned by, I always get it confused whether it was Ryerson or eCampus commissioned it. That was the initial instigation for it. We got some funding to do this new webbook design for the front end and the front end catalog theme.
And what was the blocker? Because initially there was the plan to include the book covers, and for some reason
the cover images.
Yeah, cover images in the catalog, and then it got pulled from the final design. But I don't remember, or no, maybe I'm wrong.
The plan was not to include the cover images because what we had talked about, as far as I remember, and Zoe actually probably would remember this because she and I talked extensively, was that the designs from Planck basically incorporated the idea of having a different image that would be used on the cards.
I found an old GitHub ticket related to that, and that's why.
Because the thing we were thinking was, if the cover image has a title on it, but then you're scaling it down
on top of it,
it's going to look like garbage. And so what we wanted to do was give people a way to pick an image from something like Unsplash or some sort of openly licensed image, Wiki Commons or something like that, and use that as the card image for their book. So it would be something that would be representative, that would be displayed in the catalog instead of the cover image that was actually on the cover page in the web book.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then there was some kind of story about tables and no lines. Like,
oh God, I don't know. I don't know about that. No,
we're gonna change tables, but I just wanted to make sure I wasn't gonna burn anybody's feelings by overhauling how we did.
Oh, Steele, you're going to burn someone's feelings. I guarantee it. I just don't know who. I know there were different versions. There were variations of the tables with lines, no lines, and so forth. But then the complicating factor was that some themes had their own style of table that went against what the default table styling was. So I think Andreessen, as an example, had only horizontal lines or something. And so,
we built the big spreadsheet.
So there's this kind of a table of tables, I guess you could say.
Indeed, meditate.
So I think that was kind of the issue, was that the default variations of how you could style a table, and there's that little drop down you can pick in the editor that says, does this table have, is it a lines, no lines, and so forth.
Right.
The problem with that is it makes the assumption that the theme you're using isn't already overruling the basic style of the table by changing it to something custom. And I think that was really the fundamental issue there, is that we just never were able to reconcile the ability to customize the table style with themes already having customized them in ways that were incongruous with the customization options that were there. So if you've documented the way they're used in different themes, that's already a million steps ahead of where we ever were on figuring that out.
Okay, because the thing that I vaguely remember, Ned, was at some point someone was complaining about something, probably in Pressbooks community, and you said the theme was built according to specifications from the client. I'm sorry you don't like it, or something like that. That was probably Ryerson or eCampus. Did they tell us what they wanted things to be, and then we? Because I'm worried if we change something now, there might be some frustration from them, and I need to check.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Steele, if you can find what theme that was I was talking about, then I can tell you who it was made for.
I thought it was McLuhan, but maybe not.
If it was McLuhan, then it was for either Ryerson or eCampus. I can't remember which one it was.
Okay.
Actually, hang on. I'm just going to look for this.
And how was that spec'd? Who did requirements gathering? Was that you, or who was the product manager at the time? Was it kind
of? I believe that was nobody.
Okay. Sounds like the good old days.
No, I mean, I think I'm kind of joking, but I think that was a situation where it was, I think it was a design that was made by Planck for those themes, for Jacobs and McLuhan, for the actual theme designs. And I think Planck worked with eCampus or Ryerson to prepare that. And then that was the, here it is. Hey, I found it. Did I find it? Does this have a table that I can see? No, it doesn't. Okay, maybe I was wrong. I'm just going to send you, can you send files in this application?
No, you can't. No.
The one thing that I want to do. Okay, I'm going to email this to you.
Okay, thanks.
This is, I found the PDF spec document from Planck for the, I think it's Jacobs actually. But it's interesting. It's got the table, or it doesn't have tables, but it has the text boxes and all this other thing. I was immediately kind of frustrated with this because I said to Hugh, look, this is cool, but it assumes a default page size of 8.5 by 11, which has never been our default page size. And it looks really weird when you scale it down to the standard.
Well, we added a new network manager feature where you could set your network default page size to 8.5 by 11 now if you want.
That's what was always needed. Hey, you can send files.
How?
There's a files tab here, and it says I can share them, but I have to connect Dropbox, OneDrive, or Google Drive. So I'm not going to do that.
No.
So I actually have to run, Steele, because
thanks. This was already way too helpful, but
oh yeah,
so much
pleasure.
Catching up. You blew my mind, Ned. I need to. Basically, what I'm saying is, I would love to do this a little more often and do it in a way that felt whatever that word is for you.
Okay, sounds good. I will. Yeah, I'll give it some thought, and I'll drop you an email, and I will send you that that PDF and those other things shortly.
Thanks, Ned. You're the greatest. I think you know that, but I appreciate you.
Great to chat, Steele.
Back at. All right, bye.